Coming up on episode 12 of The Good, the Bad, the Teskey, Justin Rose wins the U.S. Open. San Antonio takes a 3-2 series lead on the Miami Heat in the NBA Finals. And I preview Game 3 of the NHL Final as the series shifts to Boston. All that and more coming up on The Good, the Bad, the Teskey.
You know, you don't often have opportunities to really dedicate a win to someone you love, and today was about him.
Cheers on this Monday, June 17th. I am Colin Teskey, and welcome to The Good, the Bad, the Teskey. Off the top there, that was Justin Rose addressing the media after winning the U.S. Open, and very touching story as he dedicated yesterday's win to his dad, who passed away in 2002, and it's so fitting to have a guy like that win on Father's Day when so many fathers and sons were attending the U.S. Open at Merion, and we're also watching the U.S. Open on TV. And the fact that his dad wasn't there, it's a shame, but you know that his dad is looking on somewhere and is very proud of what Justin Rose accomplished. And let's talk about what he accomplished. This guy is the first Brit to win the U.S. Open in 43 years. And to end that streak is pretty phenomenal for a guy like Justin Rose, who's a name you've heard. He's not a well-known name, but you watch this guy over the last couple of years. He's always been in the thick of things. You've always thought, okay, this guy is an average golfer, but he hasn't ever been on the cusp of doing anything great. He's always been in the mix, never won a major, and finally gets his first major yesterday. And it's also following up a similar trend at the U.S. Open. There's now been 14 first-time winners in the last 17 U.S. Open. So there's been a lot of parity in golf, and we obviously have some household names in golf, but the Rory McIlroys, the Tiger Woods, and the Phil Mickelsons really did struggle at Merion over the course of 4 days, and we have to talk about Phil Mickelson. Obviously, Justin Rose had an incredible accomplishment, had an incredible last day where he hit 5 birdies in the final round to win the U.S. Open, but it was also a lot of talk about Phil Mickelson and his big collapse.
This one's probably the toughest for me because at 43 and coming so close, 5 times, it would have changed the way I looked at this tournament altogether, and the way I would have looked at my record. Instead, I just keep feeling heartbreak.
Now, do you know how many people would be excited that they finished second at the U.S. Open? I can name a handful of people that would probably be ecstatic that they got to that stage and they could enjoy that type of payday. But for Phil Mickelson, that's your 6th time at the U.S. Open, finishing in second. And you hear a 43-year-old talk right there, calling himself heartbroken, and how if he won this one U.S. Open, it could erase the burden that was finishing second 5 times at the U.S. Open. You could just tell that this guy is really rattled by this loss. It's going to be tough for him to bounce back. He's now getting up there in age. You don't really know if Phil Mickelson can win another one, and you got to count your blessings at this age too, to be at that stage, to be at the part where on the final day, you have a shot to win a major title. And it came down to the last couple shots as well. Justin Rose was talking about how he was on hole number 16. Mickelson was back on 14, and he could hear the crowd roar. And Rose was thinking, wow, here we go again. I have to look behind me the rest of the way here at Merion because Phil Mickelson might steal one. But he ends up finishing +3 for the day. Still gets a nice payday. Obviously still gets to go on a private jet and sip some Dom Perignon. But for Phil Mickelson, that's not what it's all about anymore. This guy wants to win majors, and he wants to add to his legacy because he's not going to get too many more shots now at the age of 43. A lot of other golfers that struggled were Tiger Woods +13 and Rory McIlroy +14. And for Tiger Woods, he was hitting fairways, getting on the greens, but he took the most putts out of any golfer in the U.S. Open. He had 128 putts. So it's now his putting that seems to be the issue. So he's going to have a lot to think about after this weekend. But let's cap it all off. Justin Rose, 2013 U.S. Open champion and the first British golfer to win in 43 years. So congratulations to Justin Rose. Also going on last night, busy Sunday in sports as the San Antonio Spurs in Game 5 of the NBA Finals. It's been a seesaw battle so far where it's been blowout, blowout, blowout after blowout. There hasn't really been any close contests in this series, and yesterday's game followed suit as San Antonio wins 114-104 over the Miami Heat. And when we talk about this game, we got to talk about one guy who was cut by the Cleveland Cavaliers, also cut twice by the San Antonio Spurs, and that is Danny Green.
Puts up a three, puts it in. Danny Green does it again. Now has an NBA Finals record for most three-pointers in the history of the Finals.
That was the call from Mike Breen after Danny Green broke the finals record for most three-pointers. That was Danny Green's 25th three-pointer in 5 games, breaking the guy on the other side of the court, Ray Allen's record from 2008, where he hit 22 three-pointers in 6 games when he was with the Boston Celtics. And for Danny Green, it's amazing what this guy has been able to accomplish. Even his teammate Tony Parker was quoted after the game saying, "I can't believe that they're still doubling me and Tim Duncan and still leaving Danny Green open." And they really are. They're really letting this guy beat them single-handedly right now. The guy had 24 points last night, and who's to say this guy won't finish with 33 pointers before this series is all over, and it could be over in a hurry. Now the series will shift back to Miami for Game 6, and the way Miami's playing right now and how well San Antonio is playing, I don't think there will be a Game 7 in Miami for various reasons. And one reason, it's the starting 5 of the San Antonio Spurs that has been the difference so far in the series, and I think is why they will prevail as the 2013 NBA champions. All 5 guys yesterday were in double digits in points, and the starter with the fewest amount of points was Kawhi Leonard, and he had 16. Tim Duncan had 17. Tony Parker had 26. Manu Ginobili had 24 points. Manu Ginobili in the regular season averaged 11 points per game. They finally start him in game number 5, and he produced results.
Ginobili sets another three, puts it in. Ginobili, nice feed, splitter on the finish. Ginobili on the drive, right-handed, banks it in. Ginobili jab step, drives on James, falling away, knocks it down.
And after the way Manu Ginobili played in Game 5, you got to think Greg Popovich is going to start him again in Game 6. This guy's been coming off the bench all season long. In the playoffs, he's been averaging 7.5 points per game, and he's been struggling in this series as well. And it was kind of funny to think that San Antonio was still tied at 2 games apiece with the Miami Heat, with Manu Ginobili not playing his best basketball, but yesterday was proof this guy is still relevant in this series, and you got to think he's going to go right back to him in game number 6. Another big storyline I want to talk about is how the Miami Heat got a lot of production from their bench last night. Ray Allen came off the bench and had 21 points in total. Miami's bench had 31 points compared to San Antonio, whose bench had 7 points. Yet San Antonio was still able to beat the Miami Heat. And if you're a LeBron James fan and you're a Miami Heat fan, you have to be worried with the way Boris Diaw guarded him last night. When LeBron James was guarded by Boris Diaw, he went 1 for 8, whereas he went 7 of 14 against other defenders from the San Antonio Spurs. And whenever he faced Boris Diaw, he was taking shots 20 feet away from the basket and not driving to the basket, getting fouls, and getting to the rim. So for LeBron James and Eric Spoelstra, they're going to have to make an adjustment in game number 6 at home. LeBron James is going to have to carry this team. I'm already going to call it right now. I think the San Antonio Spurs will finish the deal tomorrow night in Miami, and they are going to win in 6 games and be the 2013 NBA champions.
Scaled along to Bowling off his stick, turned right back over again, and led on out for someone. Paye, he scores! Paye! And the Bruins have won overtime.
So Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final goes tonight in Boston, and this is familiar territory for the Boston Bruins. In 2011, they were trailing the Vancouver Canucks in the Stanley Cup Final 2-0. They come back, and they feed off their home crowd. And you got to think right now, Chicago, this has been a momentum series so far. The momentum has to be on Boston's side right now. Chicago beats them in triple overtime in game number 1. You're expecting a bit of a letdown game from Boston after carrying the play in game 1's overtime but falling short. But Boston ends up coming back late in that one, tying the game against Chicago, and then having Dan Paille win in overtime. So you got to think the momentum is on the Boston Bruins side, and they're getting some better production from Tyler Seguin, who set up the game-winning goal on Saturday night. And for Seguin, if he can get going, that's going to provide a big boost to the Boston Bruins, who already have the top 3 playoff scorers right now in Krejci, Lucic, and Nathan Horton. And they're still in this series. If Seguin gets going, then this could be a shorter series than expected in the Boston Bruins' favor. And for Chicago right now, pretty amazing that they are still 3 wins away from the Stanley Cup final, and their captain, Jonathan Toews, only has 1 goal, but they've been carried by some other guys who have stepped up in a big way. You have to mention Brian Bickle, who has 8 goals. Patrick Kane has got 6. He had a bit of a tough start to playoffs, but he's been coming on of late. And Patrick Sharp as well with 9 has really been the most consistent Chicago Blackhawks player. But right now it seems like it's going to be a series decided by a lot of 1-goal games, and that comes down to what's going on in between the pipes right now. Tuukka Rask and Corey Crawford. Tuukka Rask obviously had the most attention coming into this series against Pittsburgh. He stopped 134 out of 136 shots, played very well in game number 1, but what's not being mentioned is the way Corey Crawford is playing. Corey Crawford right now is not the Achilles heel of the Chicago Blackhawks, which a lot of people thought coming into this series. Corey Crawford battled hard in game number 2 and has given them a chance to win every single night. And Boston really did come on in the second and third period against Chicago, and he was right there every step of the way, giving Chicago a chance to win that game. Going to be interesting tonight, though, as they step into Boston. We know that this team hasn't played a home game in a while after sweeping Pittsburgh. You got to think right now, how are they going to be able to weather the storm in those first 10 minutes? Boston, they got a lot of momentum right now. You got to think they're going to come out firing. If they can survive that first 10 minutes, Chicago has a shot, but they got to get that first goal and take the momentum out of the crowd right away. A lot of talk, too, about how the fourth line hasn't been the same for the Bruins since Gregory Campbell went down and Claude Julien can't roll as 4 lines. I tend to disagree with that a little bit. I think right now that this is the Stanley Cup playoffs. You've got 5 games left, 5 games max. You can afford to shorten your bench a little bit. I don't think it's that big of a deal in the Stanley Cup final. I think you have to roll 4 lines to get yourself to the Stanley Cup final, but I think Claude Julien will have no problem shortening his bench and maybe rolling 3 lines instead of 4. Just look at the way that line of Kelly, Paille, and Seguin played the other night. They drew both goals in a 2-1 Boston win, so I think Boston's depth is going to be fine. And I'm not a betting man, but if I had to put my money on who will win Game 3, I'd lean towards going with the Boston Bruins. They are 3-0 so far in the Stanley Cup playoffs in game number 3, while Chicago is 0-3. Going to be a great game. Puck drop at 8 o'clock. Could have been anywhere in the world, but you decided to be right here listening to The Good, The Bad, The Teskey. Remember to like us on Facebook and enjoy the game, everybody.